Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Hypothetically, if Harry Kane scores the match winner for England to win Euro 2024, do you now take Skechers football boots seriously? Or perhaps more importantly, would you consider actually buying a pair? Because despite the no pun intended sketchy reputation and what is undeniably a copycat design of the now discontinued Nike Phantom GT, it's hard to deny that the Skechers SKX launch football boot with Harry Kane switching from Nike to Skechers has been a huge success. At least when you're talking about the quality of the product and really the main face of the brand performing at the highest level. With this particular pair technically being their latest and greatest in the Skechers SKX 1.5, a very subtly updated take on the original SKX. It comes in a very flashy colorway as part of the Evolution pack and still retails for the same $225. However, because Skechers football boots, especially the high-end ones, haven't been the most popular from a sales perspective, you can very often find them on sale fairly deeply discounted. And at those discounted prices, if you're really looking for good bang for your buck, these are pretty tough to beat. Where if you are by chance interested in a pair, you can pick them up below their normal retail prices by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the first link down below. As far as what makes the SKX 1.5 different from the SKX 1, you can very clearly see the Skechers S is now solid rather than broken up. And if you look across the top of the foot, the original features a very dense elasticated knit material that extends around the edges of the opening, where the new one features a little bit more of an open perforated one that does stretch and reveal some holes, making it technically a little bit less water resistant, but also a little bit more breathable, which also extends around the opening of the football boot, again, with some holes for the sake of, I suppose, ventilation, but realistically, at the end of the day, does this at all make a difference in the playing experience of either of these two boots? Definitely not. Where realistically, even Skechers themselves haven't committed to calling this a new model, where you can see on the back of the heel, it still says SKX01, and the same thing goes for the branding on the heel of the insole. In other words, if you're one of the few with an original pair of SKX1s, don't feel the need to run out and upgrade. Lack of change aside, the SKX is a really solid performing pair of football boots, where I know the Skechers S doesn't necessarily inspire confidence in the world of football boots, but pound for pound, when you stack these up against just about any top-end model from whatever football boot brand you want to name, these hold up extremely well and are actually better than some much more popular high-end boots currently on the market. With the upper itself being somewhere in between a textile-based synthetic and an actual knitted material, but ultimately one that does feel on the thinner and firmer side. So if you're looking for softness and generally a sock-like sensation, you're not necessarily getting it from that, and that the inside is lined with this very thin synthetic that isn't uncomfortable, but it certainly is lacking in softness, which again really relates this to the days of the Nike Phantom GT, which had a Flyknit upper that felt almost identical to this. Also, just like the Phantom GTs, you're going to find texturing across the entire upper, micro texturing in the form of these little waves, as well as tiny little strips running all the way throughout, giving this upper kind of a gritty finish to the surface, where you're getting additional grip by way of friction, but it's not necessarily sticky like you would get from the rubber elements on the Adidas Predator or even the grip knit material found on some of the latest Nike boots. So this, I would actually say, maybe compares in terms of grip levels to something along the lines of the brand new F50 Elite, which also features a micro texturing all the way throughout. And honestly, on these boots in particular, I think it feels really good, where I actually like these a lot more than either variation of the Phantom GT is in the form of the shaping as well as the central lacing system, where the Phantoms had that off-centered lacing system, where I just don't think that Nike ever really got the shape right. With the laces down the middle, it allows for better overall adjustability and generally just gives the upper a better chance to wrap your foot more closely, where you're not getting any ugly folds and creases or basically dead space inside of the football boot. Of course, the upper does have a one-piece enclosure with this elasticated knit material across the top of the foot. A little bit thinner on this new 1.5, but ultimately one that doesn't make that much of a difference. And with the laces tied tight, because the upper itself is thin but still structured, the boot as a whole has a very secure, locked-in, responsive feel, as well as great overall comfort, which we'll get into a little bit more in just a second. Moving to the rear, you're going to find what is effectively a low-cut design, but you do have this extension material along the sides, as well as the pull tab here at the back. You have an internal plastic heel counter. The heel lining material features mostly targeted foam, but plenty of it, and it's lined in this really soft microfiber that feels great to the touch, super premium, and as far as lockdown and comfort in the heel area is concerned, really good, well above average compared to so many top-end football boots. Then the insole, fully removable, also well above average. You can see it features a mesh liner on the surface, and it's made from a single layer of Hyperburst Pro foam, which is a proprietary foam material from Skechers, a little bit thicker than what you would typically find from most football boot insoles, but incredibly bouncy in terms of feel, where it's got some good density to it, but it's still kind of soft and just overall provides more underfoot cushioning than 99% of football boot insoles. I really do like it. The one funny thing though is that they included this little insert in the midfoot, which is very much a copy of Nike's foam insert that's actually supposed to lock in to the sole plate, where you can see they did incorporate a pattern within the base of the sole. However, that pattern does not correspond to the one on the sole plate, so it's not really locking into anything. Moving to the base, you're going to find a stud plate sitting on top of an internal sole plate, where again, I don't think the Phantom GT necessarily introduced anything that was that unique, but considering the upper similarities to the Phantom GT, if you look at the sole plate and the stud pattern, again, it's pretty undeniable. They've done a number on copying the Phantom GT as closely as they could while still making it just that little bit different. And in terms of feel, again, not dissimilar from what Nike had in the past, maybe a little bit firmer all the way through, but overall, really solid feel to the sole plate. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, you kind of have what I would describe as a little bit less aggressive studs, where they still dig into the ground and provide plenty of bite when pushing off, but they have a little bit of a rounded edge to them, which allows you to twist and pivot with your foot planted still fairly easily. Not a standout in the world of football boots as far as FG traction is concerned, but overall, a very solid setup. And like I said, as good as most of what you'll find from all the most popular brands at those top price points. And then there's the weight, which is probably going to be the biggest knock against it, although it's not necessarily the speed boot offering from Skechers. That would be the Razor, which is significantly lighter. Nonetheless, in a size 9.5 US, you can see that the SKX 1.5 weighs in at 8.5 ounces, the equivalent of 241 grams, which is by no means super light, but it's obviously not super heavy either. I think the weight as a whole goes well with what is overall a pretty solid feel from the SKX 1.5, and for the vast majority, I don't think it's going to be a concern if this is a boot that is of interest to you. On feet, the SKX 1.5 is effectively a continuation of the Nike Phantom GT. If you are a fan of those boots and you're sad that Nike no longer makes anything that feels quite like them, this is effectively the Phantom GT3. The upper has that kind of structured, knitted feel to it, where it's still pliable, but it is still on the firmer side in terms of the feel against your foot. It's obviously very thin because of that. It doesn't have a lot of that softness or padding to it, and the gritty texture you have on the surface of the upper gives you that additional grip without it being clingy on the ball. From a fit and comfort perspective, I think these are top-notch, better fitting and more comfortable than any Phantom GT model ever was. And honestly, Skechers across the board, whether it's the SKX line or even the Skechers Razor, they fit impressively well and are extremely comfortable, which for those that are fans of Skechers, which I understand they do make some really high quality running shoes at the moment that a lot of people are big fans of, they're known for their comfort, and I think that definitely carries over into the top end football boots as well. They do feel really, really good. So if you can get past the fact that they are Skechers, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at how they fit and feel, where from a width perspective, they fit nice and snug, but aren't necessarily narrow. They have a decent amount of width and volume to them, a good balance that still allows for a snug fit without, again, that extra dead space inside of the football boots. If you have extremely wide feet, they might not be the very best option for you, but generally, I think they will work for most foot types. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size. So there you have it, as good as anything, but still Skechers. What would it take for you to wear them?